Hey guys, welcome back, and we are here with another week of Broadway grosses, so let's get into it. Up first, we have & Juliet, which went from 98% last week to 98.56% this week, and 1,058,739 to this week's 1,010,599. A Beautiful Noise did 70% last week and 79% this week, going from 798K to 827K, a considerable uptick in business. And as we know, A Beautiful Noise tends to do good when all shows do bad, and then when all shows do amazing, it does very poorly. Is it a sustainable business model? Probably not. But again, for right now, it's doing fine. Back to the Future had its second worst week, with 953K this week and 91% capacity compared to last week's 90% capacity. Now I do think this week was like Broadway week or discounted tickets or whatever, so I know that like, I think tickets were less expensive this week. Maybe it's going on into the upcoming weeks, but I do know that for right now, it's not doing so hot. And their weekly nut is 980K, so it just missed it. But it's gonna be fine. Days of Wine and Roses, surprisingly, did 84% capacity compared to last week's 80%, and 521K compared to last week's 382K, and this was because it had opened last week, so tickets were a lot less expensive, and I didn't expect it to do this good. I mean, listen, for any standard, it's not doing good, but for the prestige limited engagement that it is, it's doing pretty well. And let me know why you think it's doing so well. Maybe Broadway audiences are ready for the real things now. Maybe they're ready to actually have real art in their shows. It could be just the amazing, critic reviews that they got, and maybe people were waiting for it to get validity. But it is such a depressing musical that if it does do better, that will signal a huge shift in musicals and potentially the saving grace of original content in New York City. Hadestown did 99% this week compared to last week's 97%, and 733K last week to this week's 736K. As long as it stays in that $700,000 area, it is going to be okay. But again, I would say preferably they go as low as 750, and they should be 750 plus. But it was a decent week. Harmony in its last week did 853K compared to last week's 707K, and 98% capacity this week and last week, ending on a high note. Had It in Ohio is also ending very strong with 503K last week and 628K this week, and 94% capacity this week and 82% capacity last week. Akimbo, and that is also closing, did 87% last week, or 87% this week compared to last week's 93%, and 524K last week to this week's 498K. Merrily went from 100% to 100%, and 1,598,882 to 1,517,469. So it's definitely starting to decrease in numbers, but again, it's making half of 2 million, so how bad can it be doing? Moulin Rouge did 97% this week compared to last week's 96%, and 1,120,097 last week to this week's 1,119,593. Definitely softer numbers than you want to see, but it's by no means failing. Six did 879K last week and 835K this week, going from 99% to 97%, so it's doing fine. Spamalot had one of its weakest weeks yet, going from 72% to 75%, and 828K to 740K. And again, we don't really want to have Spamalot. Am I saying it wrong again? We don't want to have Spamalot go past the $700,000 mark. And realistically, it should. The lowest it should go is the number that it did this week. Anything else, and I'm gonna be like, I'm not loving it. But supposedly it's only going to be here until July. And then Sweeney did 94% capacity this week with no big stars, and I love that. Compared to last week's 90%, going from 776K to 857K. And I think their weekly nut is around the $800,000 area, so it I think it broke even this week, and that's with no big stars. So I'm very glad that a Sondheim musical is doing well post Groban, and it's actually continuing to maintain its audience. Very good if you're a Sondheim fan. And that's actually all the ghosts is. But yeah, I mean, as a Sondheim fan, I'm so happy that it's doing well, and I want to see a day when we can have revivals without any big stars in it, and it can still do the Josh Groban numbers. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. A pretty solid week for all musicals considered as we wait for the current spring season to begin. Like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.